Welcome everybody into another edition of the Big Ten show. The show that's all over the place. We're on the Believe Podcast Network. We're on 93.7 The Ticket in Lincoln and all over the interwebs. Now I got a special guest with me today. Before I bring Chad on, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, great company, Jacobson Seed Company. They are your healthy hybrid advantage farmers. Not only great Big Ten content, hopefully you enjoy this show anyways. They will take care of you. They do a great job. They're all across the Midwest. You can check them out. Your healthy hybrid advantage, the Jacobson Seed Company at jacobsonseed.com. If you're listening on 93.7 The Ticket, what's up, Lincoln, Nebraska? I got an Iowa man with me today. So we're going to go to war, I'm sure, but we're going to have a whole lot of fun in the process. All right, so I am joined by Hawkeyes columnist Chad Leistikow. Okay, he has served for 29 years with the Des Moines Register and USA Today Sports Network. Chad is the 2023 INA Iowa Sports Columnist of the Year and the NSMA Co-Sports Writer of the Year in Iowa. Thanks for joining me, Chad. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, Adam. Thank you for having me. Excited to talk about whatever we're going to talk about today. I think I have an idea, though, what the topic is, but we'll see.
Maybe just a little. You might have an idea, might have a clue. So let's start right off the top. All right. Caitlin Clark, at this point in time, she's pretty much a household name, something she's earned the right to have. Okay, some people are fans, some people are not. Personally, I actually am. Okay, and I know that surprises some people, the whole Iowa-Nebraska connection, but I respect her game. Okay, and I actually did a show, and I want to get your take on this, where I asked, is she polarizing? And I said yes. What I said, though, is I don't think it's really her fault, but we'll get your take on that here shortly. So Caitlin Clark, right, as most people know, NCAA Division I all-time leader, scoring leader. Now, back in December, she actually reached 3,000 points, the second fastest ever to do it. Okay, she won the Big Ten Player of the Week, a record. I don't even know if most people know this. 24 times, the first player in college basketball history to reach 3,000 points and 1,000 assists. And as most people know, just past Pistol Pete Maravich, who may be the most underrated basketball player of all time as NCAA's Division I all-time scoring leader. Now, Pistol Pete, my dad talked to me about him growing up, but he averaged 44 points a game, no three-point shot, no shot clock, so they were trying to run out the clock half the time. All right, she's going to be entering the WNBA draft. So Chad, give me your thoughts on Caitlin, because it's a two-part initial question. She's got such a well-rounded game. Rebounds, assists, shooting. She's not just a scorer. So talk to me about that. And then talk to me about the potential polarizing aspect of this as she goes forward with her career into the tournament and the WNBA.
Yeah, I think to start with the basketball part, I think the biggest thing that new Caitlin Clark viewers or people that are just getting acclimated to Caitlin Clark's game realize is that she's actually maybe a more phenomenal passer than she is a shooter. She's known on the highlight reels for her logo shots. It was pretty awesome that she set the NCAA Division I women's mark, passing Kelsey Plum with one of those logo threes. It was measured out to be 33 feet. A little side note here, Adam, is you've already seen like other teams come into the building and try to hit that shot. It is a long shot. If you walk, they have it marked on the court now with the 22. And it is a dang long shot. Like you're sitting, it's like closer to half court than it is to the three-point line. But that was what she's known for. But she has that well-rounded game. Yeah, she's the Big Ten all-time leader in assists. She's actually 29 times, by the way, Big Ten Player of the Week now. So that number has grown.
My bad.
Yeah, it just keeps going up each week. So it's easy to miss. And then she's going to finish as the third leading rebounder in Iowa history, rebounder for a point guard. So, that she is a well-rounded player. It feels like she can just turn it on whenever she wants. She's always going at a high speed, but when Iowa needs her, when Iowa needs an answer, it seems like she has that answer. That's kind of the competitor in her, and that leads into what you're talking about, the polarizing thing. She is a dang fierce competitor, and I think that's part of why I don't think she really brings it on herself in any way, shape, or form, but she's just like so intense. You're just not always used to seeing that on the women's side of the game. And I think that for some people that can be jarring for some reason. For some people that can be polarizing. As you say, she does argue with the refs constantly. That is very much an accurate statement. Iowa can be up 30 points. If she doesn't like a call, she's going to argue it. I think she does need to tone that down a little bit as they get to the postseason, because we saw in the NCAA championship game last year, she got teed up for her 4th foul against LSU for kind of a borderline, thing, and it did hurt Iowa's chances to win that game. So, yeah, we can get into more of what your views are on that, but yeah, I think just how hard she plays makes her a little bit polarizing, because she does bring it. She'll talk smack. She's known for talking a lot of trash on the court. So that is kind of part of the Caitlin Clark experience.
So it's funny you brought up the national championship game from last year. I actually wanted to ask you about that interaction that got so much publicity between her and Angel Reese of LSU. What were your thoughts on that? And I know obviously you cover Iowa sports, but did you tend to take one side more than the other, whether it was Caitlin's or whether it was Angel Reese's? Like, what were your thoughts on that interaction in the game? Because that put a spotlight on Caitlin Clark that had not previously been there, and it has not gone away. And it can be good. It can be frustrating if you're in the spot. It can go both ways if you're in the spotlight. But what was your thought on that interaction and the spotlight that's been on her ever since?
Yeah, that's a great point, because I've told this story many times, but when I was covering the Sweet 16 in Seattle last year, it was awesome because there wasn't that much media out there. Like, it was still Caitlin Clark was, drawing crowds, all that thing, but like the media attention had not grown. But then when you got to the Final Four in Dallas, it exploded. And then, as you referenced, Adam, the Angel Reese kind of, this celebration, the ring, whatever, did create conversation, and which was pretty, I think a lot of people viewed that as a really positive thing for the women's game. Hey, look at, the women's game is getting nationally talked about. And that's a good thing. I think that was the conclusion. Now, from where as far as looking back at that incident, which is now about 12 months ago, number one, I thought Caitlin handled it beautifully, wonderfully, maturely. She didn't have any problem with what Angel Reese did. She said she should celebrate. She's a competitor. I'm a competitor. It's fiery. It's intense out there. So she had no personal problem with it. I think fans more so take exception to certain things. And I think the one thing that I feel like got misconstrued maybe in the national narrative was when Caitlin did this in the Iowa-Louisville game, she didn't do it like towards another player. She was doing it, in regards to, whatever the John Cena thing is, or you can't see me. Yeah. And she was just on fire, but Angel kind of did it to her face. That was a distinction. I don't know if it matters really, but I'm just saying, I think people thought, oh, well, she did it to Haley Van Lith, so why can't she take it back? And so I don't think that was like apples and apples. But anyway, that's been a year now, and the year since has just been an absolute circus surrounding Caitlin Clark. I mean, every single game, the amount of attention she gets is absurd. I mean, it certainly exceeds anything I've ever seen from an Iowa athlete, and I would say it's pretty rare, I would guess, on the college level. Maybe thinking back to like a Christian Laettner or somebody like that. I mean, we're talking huge name in the sport for a long period of time. So it has been crazy to follow. And I think she's handled it. What's amazing is she's handled great off the court. I mean, her ability to deal with everything is so impressive as a 22-year-old. And in addition, she brings it on the court every single night. Like, she rarely, if ever, has an off night. So I feel like that what she's done in the last year since the moment you talked about has been pretty impressive.
It's interesting. I got a few thoughts. I think that interaction, like you pointed out, has brought so many more eyeballs to the women's basketball game. And I think it's been phenomenal for the women's side of things. And it's interesting. Caitlin's reaction to what Angel did actually has not changed my opinion, but it's scoped my entire opinion of her, because like you said, she does argue with the refs. She does talk trash, but that's how some people are. Okay, Jordan had no problem wagging his finger in people's eyes, and Kobe was Kobe and everything else. Okay, and look, I'm not a big LeBron guy, but he likes to flop all over the place, whatever the case may be. Everyone's kind of got their thing. My question, and the way I view people, is how do you react when it's done back to you? And so the way she handled what Angel Reese did, which she had every right to do if you know, Caitlin was talking trash, she said, "Hey, I got no problem with what Angel did." So the fact that she's willing to receive it as well as give it, I think that's kind of scoped my perception of her in a much more positive manner than it otherwise might have been. Now it's interesting because when we talk about eyeballs on the women's game and on Caitlin, and she's going to make so much more money because of the eyeballs. It also makes life a lot harder, okay, depending on how you handle it. And like you said, she's handled it very well. But think about this. There was an impressive 3.4 million viewers on Fox for Iowa and Ohio State, okay, on that Sunday afternoon. Beyond women's college hoops superlatives, easy for me to say in general, Caitlin's record-setting game was higher than both TNT, NBA opening night games this season, both those games, okay? And higher than Victor Wembanyama, I can't say this name right, I have practiced it, Wembanyama's NBA debut on ESPN, which is crazy considering how highly he was drafted. So we've kind of talked about the eyeballs. We've kind of talked about how she's handled it. But I'm curious, because you're closer to the program than most, all right? What can you tell us about Caitlin Clark that maybe we don't know, that the typical fan doesn't know?
Well, she's definitely got a goofy side. She's humorous. She's engaging. I mean, I think what people probably have seen, like how much time she devotes to signing little kids' autographs. And what's awesome about this whole spectacle, and I don't know, it happened over at Nebraska too. And after Nebraska beat Iowa, I mean, like she'll sign autographs for kids, little boys, little girls, adults. I mean, they're all like Caitlin Clark super fans. And she's, it's pretty. That part of it too is, I mean, she definitely wants to grow the game of women's basketball. So I think that's always in her thought process. And I think as she goes to the WNBA, I think that's part of her mentality as well, is like, she wants to shine light on women's basketball. And she's been doing that. And in a really mature way. I guess I don't know if that gets to your question about what, something we don't know about her, but and then the other thing that made me think of, I wanted to mention on that question was like how her world has changed. Like we'll go to cover a men's game, Iowa men's game or something, and she'll be at the game watching, but she can't, if she was there by herself, she'd be mobbed by fans. Well, they try to come up to her anyway, but now she has like two police officers that sit around her, near her, that kind of shoot people. Hey, she wants to enjoy the game today, that type of thing. And that's totally cool. She rarely gets these chances to breathe and just watch the men's game or whatever, but that's kind of her world now. Going to restaurants, anywhere she goes, she's going to be nationally recognized. And so it's kind of crazy to think about. Like, you don't really see this very often at that young of an age in college. Like college athletes don't generally become that big of a superstar. I mean, if you see Iowa football quarterbacks or, Iowa football stars walking through Carver, and they don't get the same type of treatment. She is just on a whole nother level in terms of the celebrity. And that's what I would call her, like on everywhere we've gone, like on the road covering this team. Like, it is truly covering like what I would imagine I don't know, maybe this is too much of a stretch, but like a Taylor Swift or, like a big music star or something, where there's an entourage, there's like a presence everywhere they go, cameras everywhere you go, people screaming wherever you go. I mean, it is kind of that rock star thing that's why it's just been so unique to be covering all this in the last year.
I love that, getting to see the personal side of her. You're talking about she's kind of got this kind of personality that's interesting, that's kind of fun to be around. I was a rookie with the Rams, so this would have been 2007, and he wasn't on the team long, so his name escapes me. But he played at Florida. Okay, no, wait, it was my first year in DC, and I don't even know what to call the team because I've had so many name changes. I'm sorry, it was my first year in DC. But he was there for a couple of weeks, and then ended up on another team. But he played at Florida, and he was telling me about Tim Tebow, because when Tebow, he was the number one recruit in the entire
That's
country.
a good one.
Yeah, and he was telling me about how, not Tebow, but I wish I could remember his name. I want to say James Troutwine, but I can't remember if that's it for sure. But he was inside Best Buy, just a college guy in there looking to buy something, whatever the case may be, and walks Tebow. They kind of interact, say hi, nothing too major. He walks out. The next day, like a bunch of his teammates came up to him and they're like, "Did you hear about what happened with Tebow at Best Buy?" And he's like, "No, I just saw him. What happened?" Apparently, he got mobbed, and he couldn't, like, let alone get out of the store. He couldn't get out of the aisle because he got mobbed by people, because he didn't expect that, just being a freshman, but he was so highly anticipated. They legit had to call in the police force to get him out of Best Buy. So if she didn't have her entourage, talking about Caitlin, it'd probably be like that everywhere
For sure. Yeah.
she goes. Now, I do got a question. Now, I will own up to this. When her and the fan collided at Ohio State earlier this year, it looked to me like she could have avoided it, and I stated that opinion on this show, and I think on social media. It's somewhere through my timeline if I did, but I know I stated it here. Last week, I discovered, and I've said actually positive things about Caitlin. Even when I talked about her being polarizing, I really kind of said it really wasn't her fault. I didn't think. Again, she was willing to take that from Angel Reese. So if you can take things, I'm more willing to let you dish it. And I said, basically, she could have avoided it, running into the fan. I discovered last week that she blocked me on Twitter, which I thought was interesting because I didn't even know she knew who I was. So what are your thoughts on her blocking me on Twitter? And is there any way you could let her know that I'm actually just a big fan of hers? And I got 5 daughters. Okay. They all play basketball, and they all either play with boys or against boys or older divisions. And I've actually been showing them clips of Caitlin, because I have one daughter, Dakota. She wasn't excited about playing with boys. Okay. And against boys. And so I had discovered that Caitlin had played on a boys team when she was younger, and I was kind of telling Dakota about it, and I was showing highlight tapes, and now Dakota's all excited, and now she's out there. She's basically on the wrestling team now because she's always fighting over the ball, and they end up on the ground. They're in elementary school. But what are your thoughts on her blocking me? Okay. And then let her know I got nothing but love and respect for her. If I didn't, I wouldn't say so. There's other people I've angered, and I don't say anything, but I really do, legit so.
Yeah, I don't know what your timeline says, so it's hard for me to say. But she is she has a good social media presence as well, and is very aware of what people say. So that I don't know what to say about that. But I will say, I did a story with her last May where I've done this the past 2 Mays actually, where I've kind of gone to one of her workouts and observed her, and I have a video up. It's somewhere. You can find it. They still use it like on like TV clips and stuff like that of her working out this past summer. And when she runs with her head down. And that's when I saw the court storming video and the replays and that stuff, I was like, oh yeah, that's how she runs. She runs with her head down. She isn't always like looking up when she runs, because she's kind of focused or whatever, I don't know. That's just the way she runs. And so I was like, oh yeah, there's like no way she like intentionally did anything. Like, that's just the way she runs. And so I'm sure like very few people would put all that stuff together. But when I saw that, I was like, yeah, I can see exactly how this happened, that she didn't see the fans. So anyway, that's what I thought when I saw that. And, once again, if you look at the post-game interview from that Ohio State game when she got knocked over, she was like, hey, they just beat us. They deserve the right to, storm the court or whatever. I mean, she was very mature about it. She didn't say like, that's ridiculous. They need to protect us. It was just like, hey, it was an exciting environment. They just rallied from 12 points down in the fourth quarter. They beat us, hats off to them. I'm sure that fan was really excited. And again, it amazes me that because she does have that feistiness to her, that she handles, all these things very well, with her voice and with her actions.
What are your thoughts on court stormings? Are they something? I don't think they should be eliminated yet. I've always said it's the Wild West. Excuse me. It's the Wild West. Like there's no preparation for the teams. There's no security ready. There's nothing. Like to me, it wouldn't take, you just have a team meeting. Every team has a team meeting. This is what happens. If a court might be stormed, you're going to go this way. You should have the security ready. You can even start getting the security lined up. You can send out a message to fans, honestly, through team social media. Hey, respect the opposing team as the security escorts them off the court, and then go celebrate with our team amongst each other safely. There's never been anything like that done. It's just craziness, and nobody's prepared for anything. And I said, why don't we just try that first instead of getting rid of something that I think is pretty freaking cool? Because most people are like, get rid of it, keep it as is. But what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, like in the Ohio State example, for as we're talking about this, it's like there's really like not a bunch of precedent for court storms in women's basketball. So,
Yep.
Ohio State isn't used to having 17, 18,000 fans. And so I can understand that they weren't necessarily prepared for that. And again, it was a pretty great rally by the Buckeyes. It was a nationally televised upset at that point of Iowa. Ohio State, of course, went on to win the Big Ten regular season title as a result. So it was a huge win. But yeah, I don't know. Like I feel like there's a way to, and I've seen some places do this where they just kind of rope off the handshake line and just kind of keep security, just sort of keeps that as a safe space for teams. Yeah, I mean, it seems I don't have a strong feeling on like, don't storm the court, you crazy kids. But isn't it kind of crazy, though? Like in the SEC, for example, like you get fined if you storm the football field and the opposing team gets the money. Like that's just crazy. I think it happened when Tennessee. The last I remember it happening was Tennessee football storming the field after they beat Alabama, and so they had to like write whatever the check is, $250,000 maybe.
Jeez,
I think it was something like that that goes to Alabama. So it's like a little bit of an incentive, but you're like, it was still worth it.
Well, that's the first time because they always play the third Saturday in every October every year, and that was the first time they'd beaten them in a long time. And then they tore down the goalpost, and then they like carried it out of the stadium into the street. Here's what I think, because first of all, it's not Tennessee fans' money, but I guarantee a Tennessee fan would tell you it was totally worth it. But it's easy to say when it's not your money. Now, I do want to ask you, because the last time that Iowa played Nebraska in Pinnacle Bank Arena, Nebraska was able to pull off the upset, but the post-game press conference, okay, there was a little bit of drama. All right, the away team, per Big Ten protocol, is supposed to go to the press conference first. I guess Iowa was taking a little bit longer than they otherwise would have. Nebraska went to the press conference first. There was audio that was leaked to everybody of the Iowa's head coach being pretty upset about this. Anyways, what was your take on that whole thing and how it kind of played out?
Yeah, I was in that press conference, and I remember thinking, what the heck? Why are they bringing the three Nebraska players there? Why are they bringing them in here first? Because it is kind of typical for the way media contingents are. Like a lot of times let's say the visiting media, in this case, had a really large contingent, is there for, the Iowa players and coaches. And, in this case, Nebraska came in and was like, that's kind of strange that they're starting this, because there's 3 players up there. This could take a while. It's not going to take like 4 minutes with 3 players. So yeah, that was a little bit jarring to me. I didn't think much of it, honestly. What happened was after the Nebraska players were done, they did bring Caitlin Clark and Kate Martin, 2 Iowa players, into the media room, but Lisa Bluter did not come into the media room as a result. In fact, we got her out in the hallway for like a couple minutes, a couple of us local reporters, like maybe 5 or 6 of us maybe. And so it was just kind of strange. It was unusual, but I feel like whatever happened could have been communicated between the Nebraska and Iowa staffs. I mean, I'm not a media relations guy, but having observed this long enough, the fact that, it caught Iowa off guard, was surprising. Probably shouldn't have reacted like that. I'm sure Lisa Bluter would say, she would regret that, the way she was, the words that she used in that situation. But I know it was a heated environment. They just lost a game, and the way they lost, and they probably just wanted to get the heck out of there. They had to go watch the Super Bowl back home,
All right, last question for you. Is Iowa the favorite to win the Big Ten tournament? And can they get back to that national championship game in the NCAA tournament this year?
I saw that they were plus 130, I think, on DraftKings to win the Big Ten tournament. So I'm going to say, even though they're the 2 seed, they probably are the favorite. I mean, I think the odds makers would say so as well, even though Ohio State's the 1, just because I was up there last year at the Target Center, and that is very much going to be a pro Iowa crowd. That's going to be about 10,000 seats, I think it is. And it's probably going to be 90% Hawkeye fans. It's already sold out. It's been sold out for weeks. It's a very short drive from Iowa. It makes sense. But that said, it's going to be a fun tournament. Nebraska, maybe they'll have a rematch with Iowa in the championship game. That's very possible if they make a run. I mean, Ohio State's not invincible. I think it's going to be really hard for Iowa to get back to the national championship game just because there's so many good women's teams out there. I think if Iowa makes it to the Final Four again, that would be another huge accomplishment, especially because they lost a couple really key players off last year's team, and they really didn't replace them in the portal. They didn't add anybody new. So they basically subtracted those 2 players and have gotten back to the point they are now. So I'm going to say no, they don't get to the national championship game just because the odds would tell you you'd have to hit a 5-team parlay, basically. You got to win 5 times in a row. And that might mean facing South Carolina again, which hasn't lost since Iowa beat them a year ago.
Talked about the eyeballs on Caitlin, how polarizing it can be. Well, guess what? If you're one of her teammates, you're right there with her day in and day out to a certain extent. So I'm curious, all the eyeballs, all the attention, all the potential polarization that follows Caitlin Clark, how have her teammates handled that?
Yeah, good question. Number one, she's an incredible teammate. I wish I had said that earlier. Like, she's so she is one of those loving teammates. She shares a lot of her NIL stuff, with them, like she got them all new Nikes. She's gotten them, presents
Awesome.
before like that, that kind of thing. But so I think that's one of the things that I came into even just covering her with the perception that, she's kind of known as a selfish player, blah, blah, blah. Again, this is like before I even got to know her, anything like that. But then you realize that's not true. So that she's actually the opposite of that. And she's like, makes the other girls laugh and they make her laugh. And like I said, she's kind of like a goofy personality and just like has this funny sense of humor and just kind of a, like a normal girl. Just Caitlin, as her dad likes to say. She's just Caitlin. And but yeah, what's interesting is the teammates have been kind of brought into this celebrity thing as well, because they are now household names as well. A lot of them are. I mean, maybe not as much as Caitlin Clark nationally, but like, Kate Martin, Molly Davis, Gabby Marshall, Hannah Stolke. These are all women who, I mean, their names are synonymous with Iowa basketball. You know who they're talking about. They can't go to the grocery store either, without getting stopped. So I feel like that they've embraced it in a way. Coach Lisa Bluter talks about like pressure is a privilege. And I think that's really resonated with a lot of these women, that they are lucky to be in this spot, to embrace it. It's an opportunity. So it's not something to be scared of, to be shied away from. And so I feel like they've handled it pretty well. I've always wondered, how much can they hold up? Can they keep this going for so long? Because last season was so long. They had the crossover at Kinnick where they had 55,000 plus fans. This was back in October. And so like it's been going, the spotlight has been on for so long. So far they've handled it pretty well. And I think they've gotten to the postseason now where I think they're going to make it.
Yeah, I think with the spotlight, you either get used to it or you get worn out from it. And you know what? It's not a bad idea. It sounds like she's just a kind of a goofy person, like in a good way. I mean that, like a goofy, fun personality. And then I'll tell you what, if you want to keep people happy, buy them stuff. That never hurts. You know what I mean? I mean, here, you can tell her this. If she were to buy me stuff, I would allow her to then unblock me on Twitter. That'd be okay with me if she wanted to do that. You can let her know I said that. Last question for you, and this is kind of a cool thing. All right, did you see the article that was a letter from a father, okay, of how he bonded with his daughter, and what impact besides the mania have you kind of seen when it comes to that situation and the father bonding with his daughter in this scenario?
Yeah, it was for those that haven't seen it, the Minneapolis Star-Tribune published it. It's probably available elsewhere as well. In fact, he sent it to me as well in the Des Moines Register. And I think while we were like in the process of like publishing it, they published it. So we're like, let them have it, whatever. So it was a really cool article, or cool letter basically to Caitlin Clark. It was a dad. I believe he is of Indian descent, who always wanted a son and was disappointed that he didn't have a son. But then because of Caitlin Clark, basically he, his fatherhood, his relationship with his 5-year-old daughter, grew because of that. And so I think that kind of awakened something inside of him too. So anyway, that's kind of a nutshell version of what he wrote, but it's really touching. And I guess I would just say, just generally speaking, you just see that all the time when you see these thousands of fans in all these different arenas, because for a lot of people, like when I was out in Maryland, like it's the one chance if you're in DC to come see her, and you get that one chance to see that concert that's coming through town or whatever. And I feel like it is kind of like, oh my God, like it's her. Look what she did. Oh, she shoots jump shots like that. Oh, that's cool. Oh, she gives her teammates fist bumps like that. Oh, I'll do that too, and that's just it's just that part of it I think is really cool. Like just to see young fans just being inspired by that and kind of their lives changed by that experience.
I think it's cool the eyeballs that have been brought to women's basketball, but it's also kind of cool how sometimes a person like Caitlin or what's going on in women's basketball can inspire people, can bring people together, a father, a daughter, or just generally just be a good thing for humanity beyond even just sports. You know what I mean? So, all right, Chad, I want to thank you for staying overtime, answering some extra questions, and thank you for joining me. Hopefully we'll have you out again in the near future as well.
All right. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate you guys.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was a great interview, a great chat. Iowa Insider, okay, about Caitlin Clark. Now, I got some other topics I want to chat about here for the remainder of the time. And it's interesting because you get on MSN and all this stuff pops up. And sometimes I click on it, sometimes I don't. But there were two interesting things that popped up that I was like, man, I wonder how many Big Ten teams are a part of this. Okay, and some of these are Big Ten teams and future Big Ten teams. I've kind of started to lump in USC, UCLA, Washington, Oregon. I know they're not technically in the conference yet. In my mind, they are, so I've just kind of started to lump them in. But the first thing that popped up was the 20 teams heading into the NCAA basketball tournament, the men's side, that are most likely to win the tournament. And there were 3 Big Ten teams that were on this list. All right. I'm going to shock you with the first one, the Purdue Boilermakers. They've been number 1 throughout a large part of this college basketball season. All right, now this tournament, when it comes to Purdue, is what it's all about. They had so many guys come back from last year's team. They didn't come back to be number 1 at points throughout the year. They didn't come back, honestly, to win the Big Ten tournament. This team, I'm sure that's what they want to do, but this team came back. A lot of these guys came back because they want to win an NCAA tournament national championship. All right, now, part of the reason this is such a big deal is Purdue has kind of earned a reputation for laying a big egg in the big dance in the past. Okay, capped by last year becoming just the second number 1 seed in history to lose to a 16 seed. Okay, that everyone was compelled to come back to redeem themselves, is kind of what I was talking about. A lot of that has to do with the big egg they laid a year ago. Okay, now the first ever number 1 seed to lose to a 16 seed was Virginia. Okay, about 8 or 9 years ago. I don't know if I got that timeline exactly right. I remember I was skiing in the mountains with my family on spring break when I watched Virginia lose, and that was the first time ever a number 1 seed in the decades and decades of collegiate basketball and NCAA tournament history that a number 1 seed had lost to a 16 seed. It wasn't all that long ago that a 2 had never lost to a 15. But then that eventually did happen, and obviously now 2 number 1s have gone down to a 16 seed. But my point is Virginia came back the next year and won the whole freaking thing. That's why a lot of these Purdue players came back, including Zach Edey. Now, we could talk about this in the future, and I'm sure his name will come up a lot more throughout the tournament, especially if Purdue keeps winning each game week after week. But a lot of scouts don't exactly project him to be a top-flight NBA-type player. He's not the most fluid, fast-footed individual. Okay, but he could do a lot to help his draft stock in this NCAA tournament, especially as you play against better and better competition. The spotlight becomes bigger. The games become bigger. He could help his draft stock a lot. Okay, now, Zach Edey could win Player of the Year honors once again. He did a year ago. Okay, with grad transfers, Lance Jones, who's and has been a huge addition, and returnees Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, and Mason Gillis. This team really has everything to win it all, which is why they've been number 1 several times throughout the year, okay? Just kind of like they did the past couple years. They had what it took to win it all as well, which is why they were such a high seed a year ago. They just have to do it. Now, Purdue may be the best team in the country, but nobody's going to actually believe it until they show it in the tournament. That's probably the team out of the Big Ten with the highest expectations, the most amount of question marks because of what they've done in the past. But they've got a ton of returning players. They helped themselves in the transfer portal, a potential 2-time Player of the Year in Zach Edey, who wants to win a title and help his draft stock. So I'm curious. I'm going to be watching Purdue. And obviously, being a Nebraska guy, those 2 teams is much or more than anybody. Okay. Now, The two other teams in the Big Ten tournament are going into the NCAA tournament that have a chance to win it all, okay, as good as anybody else in the Big Ten and a lot of teams in the country, as well as Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin could be this year's version of the 2022-2023 UConn Huskies. Now, Greg Gard continues Bo Ryan's philosophy of tough defense mixed with efficient offense. When I watch Wisconsin basketball, and this isn't a bad thing in any way, shape, or form, it's like the same thing as watching Wisconsin football. And I know Luke Fickell wants to throw the ball, wants to spread it around a lot more, but Barry Alvarez for years took the Nebraska philosophy, play great defense, run the ball, be tougher than your opponent, outlast them, be more physical. And that's what Wisconsin has been for years. Very slow, methodical, run the ball on offense and football, play great defense. We're not going to beat ourselves. We're going to be very disciplined, and that's how we're going to beat you. Wisconsin basketball is essentially the basketball version of their football team. Okay, they're methodical on offense, they're disciplined, they're physical as much as a basketball team can be, and they play great defense. Now, here's what's interesting. Gard's Badgers have one of the most efficient offenses in the entire country, despite the defense not being as strong as usual. I forgot to mention that. Typically, they're a little bit better than they actually have been this year defensively, which is how they had a couple of upsets. Okay, but they're still not terrible on defense by any stretch. Despite using a slower tempo, the Badgers are averaging nearly 76 points per game, which is crazy about when you think about college basketball, and it's 40 total minutes, not 48 like the NBA. Okay, so you might ask how? How can they average so many points playing slower, more methodical? While other teams may have experience in terms of games played at the collegiate level, Wisconsin not only has that, but this team has been acquiring their experience together. Now, Max Klesmit is a strong shooter, over 41% from three-point range to be exact. All right, now if the game gets close, 5 Badgers in the rotation, here's how they score so many freaking points. 5 Badgers in the rotation shoot over 80% from the free throw line and over 65% field goal shooting percentage, which is crazy good. So they can make threes. If you put them on the line and foul them, the old hack a shack, that ain't going to work with this team because they'll make the free throws. Over 80% from 5 Badgers is insane, okay? And you leave them open, they're going to knock them down. They're very efficient. They don't score quickly, but they score efficiently. All right, now another team to keep your eye on. Now, if you're a Husker fan, I'm just going to tell you right now, Nebraska fans are excited because they were able to pull off upsets against both of those teams. All right, but I'll get to Nebraska basketball in a minute. No, they were not on this list as one of the top 20 teams most likely to win the NCAA tournament, but I still want to chat about them for a minute. Now, the Illinois Fighting Illini is the third team from the Big Ten. Of the 3 teams that are listed on this top 20 team list most likely to win the NCAA tournament, they're the third team that's listed. All right, now, Illinois' fate may come from as much in the courtroom as it will on the court. Now, the school suspended leading scorer Terrence Shannon Jr. weeks after he was charged with a serious crime in Kansas. A judge has since reinstated him after a month of missed games, and he's starting to perform as he did prior to the suspension. Now, assuming he will continue to play this season, Shannon is what makes Illinois really a potentially Final Four team. He's really kind of the difference maker. Now, I'm not saying he's, the Illinois version of Caitlin Clark, okay? But take Caitlin Clark off of Iowa. They're not even in the conversation for making the Final Four. Probably not the Sweet 16. No disrespect to everyone else on that team. It just is what it is. Okay, if you take him off of Illinois, and if he's not playing at the same level, they're just not going to be even in the conversation for making the Final Four, Elite Eight, etc. Okay, he leads the team in scoring and is easily the straw that stirs the drink for Illinois. He's an NBA type of talent. And having said that, Illinois did all right in his absence. In fairness to the rest of the team, I said all due respect earlier, their only defeats came to Purdue and Maryland. Now, big man Coleman Hawkins and Southern Illinois transfer Marcus Domas stepped up their scoring, which could be advantages heading into March. So maybe it was a good thing he missed some time because some other guys had to step up, and now that he comes back, maybe they'll be a little bit more well-rounded when it comes to their scoring. All right, Illinois is one of the top rebounding teams in the nation due to their size across the starting lineup. Now, in football, if you listen to me in the past on this show or other shows, I've always said offense puts butts in the seats, defense wins games. The trenches wins championships. In basketball, I have a slightly modified version of that same saying. Offense puts butts in the seats, defense wins games. Rebounding wins championships. If you do a statistical analysis, the team that rebounds better tends to win the game 90% of the time. The other big advantage, and I'm going to shock you with this one, the team that shoots better. That's the second most important stat when it comes to who's going to win the game, the team with the higher shooting percentage. Okay, but rebounding, the more opportunities you get versus the less opportunities your opponent gets, or if they get more opportunities, pretty simple stuff to understand, your chance of winning the game goes up exponentially. All right. Now, Illinois will have a 4-day stretch in March where they'll play at Wisconsin and host Purdue that may show us what this team is capable of. So those are kind of the top 3 teams that people are looking at nationally when it comes to out of the Big Ten Conference having a legit opportunity. Everybody's got a chance, but having a legit opportunity once the NCAA tournament starts to potentially winning the NCAA tournament. Now, Purdue is by far going to be the favorite out of all those teams, but we've seen teams in the past go on runs, so you never know what can happen. Now, if you're a Nebraska fan and you're listening to this, you look at your Huskers. Now, it'd be pretty surprising. They got the double bye in the Big Ten tournament. And they're probably going to beat Michigan to end the year. Okay, they beat them by 20 points earlier this year. They could lose, who knows? But if they win, they're going to end up 22-9. And pretty much the consensus for most of the year is that if you get to 22 wins, this is if they don't win a game in the Big Ten tournament. Hopefully they do. If you're a Husker fan, all right, 22 wins is probably going to get them in. Now, most people project them to be anywhere from a 10 seed to a 9, 8, 7, etc. I kind of talked about that before. So they're currently 21-9, favored to beat Michigan their last game of the year. They're 11-8 in conference. Okay. Now, if they do beat the Wolverines, they will be 12-8 in conference. Okay. And they will have won 6 of their last 7 games to close the year. They've been playing well. Not the toughest strength of schedule these last 7 games, if we're being fair. Okay, and right before that, they actually lost to Illinois on the road in overtime. Okay, so, but they have finished on a bit of a hot streak. Spanked quite a few of these teams, honestly, but not the toughest strength of schedule. Okay, but they would be on a bit of a roll going into the Big Ten tournament, depending on how they do there. Depends on their seeding, obviously, as they head into the NCAA tournament, which most people expect them to be in. And I'm curious to see how far they can go and what they can do. Most people know they're the only Power 5 basketball program not to have an NCAA tournament win in their history, and hopefully they can do something about that and change their fortunes just a smidge. Now, the other thing I saw on MSN.com, this is what I'll close the show with today. Okay, and I just thought this was funny. The 10 ugliest/worst arenas in all of college basketball. Okay, and there were 2 teams that were on this list. Now, I'll be honest with you. There was one team that popped into my mind immediately. Every time I see their court, which isn't a lot, being on the West Coast, I'm just like, that is the worst post-high school. In other words, college or NBA basketball court, the ugliest thing I've ever seen. You know, I'm going to save that for the end of the show. I'm going to skip to the other Big Ten team that's on this list. There's 2 teams on this 10-team list. I'm going to come back to that, the team I was just talking about. I'm going to go to Minnesota, Williams Arena. Okay. Now, the Barn, as it is known by fans of the Gophers, is one of the oldest college basketball arenas in the country, but it is showing its age after 96 years of service. Let's do some freaking updates, some upkeep. I mean, these Big Ten teams are making millions and millions and millions. If you like The Rock, you know what that means, of dollars every year. How about we update the freaking thing? All right. Okay. Maybe less people will be doing hockey in Minnesota if if the basketball court and arena looks a little bit better. It is one of the few arenas to still have a raised floor. Now, Vanderbilt was on this list earlier. They're not in the Big Ten, so I didn't talk about them. But unlike Vanderbilt's floor, Minnesota's doesn't look quite as bad. So Minnesota's actually lower on this list, but it's on this list than Vanderbilt was, but it still doesn't look good. The major issue with Williams Arena is that many seats are partially obscured from the court because of the design of the building. The only way to rectify this issue would be to remove the seats or complete a massive renovation that would likely change the entire identity of the building, which is probably why they haven't done any upkeeps or changes or modernizations of the building, which they really should. Okay. I got number 11 respect for Minnesota's basketball program. Let's take care of the fans a little bit, especially with all that money that you're raking in, okay? So I'm coming back to the ugliest basketball court I've ever seen post-high school. And this is, Nike's not that far away. You look at their football uniforms. The ugliest colors I think you can try to combine together are yellow and green, and somehow Oregon makes it work. They've turned their ugly school colors into a strength because they're known by everyone for their uniforms. I don't know how they did that, but that is wizardry, and I give them mad props for figuring out how to do that. So why is the basketball court so bad? Okay, the Matthew Knight Arena itself, is as bad, in my opinion, or worse, as some of the arenas on this list. And mostly it's because of the appearance of the court, the color of the court. Okay. Now, and the floor, so to speak. The court has a design where darker shaded evergreen trees protrude in from every side, and because the court's shading is odd, it makes watching a game there painful. It's just weird. It's unique. Some people might like it. I think you know where I stand. And I got nothing but love and respect for Oregon's programs as an overall whole. Okay, I've been to the Oregon football program when I was coming out of high school, getting looked at by colleges. It's a gorgeous, absolutely. Eugene is gorgeous. Okay, their facilities back, in 02, 01? I think it was 01 when I went there, were just gorgeous. All right, let's fix the basketball court, shall we? All right, the lines on the court don't stand out very well from the rest of it. And in the middle of the court, where there is the name of the floor, and a slogan, Deep in the Woods, the words are tough to read because they move across the edge of the darker and lighter shaded parts of the floor. Overall, a sloppy floor design has killed what was, at one time, a very good arena. All right, I just thought those were interesting articles. All right, the 3 teams to watch out of the Big Ten, the most, just for general terms, taking aside who you may root for as a team as an overall whole, Purdue, Wisconsin, Illinois, who have legit chances to make NCAA tournament runs. If you're a Husker fan, nobody wants to play them because they've already beaten top flight teams and just about beat Illinois on the road as well. So I'm curious to see what they can do. And then when it comes to Minnesota's basketball court, when it comes to Oregon's basketball court, again, I got all due respect for these programs. What PJ Fleck has done with that football program, what they've actually been able to do with their basketball program, especially at times over the years, has been fairly impressive. Oregon, you got all that Nike money. I mean, just shoot Phil Knight a text and he'll give you $18 billion to redo the court or something. I don't know. My point is, your programs are too good not to take care of the fans in all the sports, football, basketball, baseball, etc., because there's so many. Okay, take care of those teams, take care of those programs, take care of the fans, and take pride in how certain things look, especially a basketball court. That's what people are seeing every time they watch your basketball team on national television, especially in this new Big Ten conference that's going to be coming up in the next season. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this has been another edition of the Big Ten show. Not a Big Ten show, the Big Ten show. If Ohio State is the Ohio State, we are the Big Ten show. All right, and shout out to our sponsors, the Jacobson Seed Company. They are your healthy hybrid advantage, okay? You can check them out at jacobsonseed.com. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Big Ten show. We'll see you next time.